Our topic tonight is there more to life than this? So we went out on the streets and we asked some people that question, and this is what they said. Let's take a look.
The things that make me happy are when I've not got to look at a clock.
And eating good food really makes me happy.
Just being here, really. It's just life is good, isn't it?
Just getting what you want.
She makes me happy. Sunshine, music, just being, I don't know, healthy.
I like to party, I like to go out.
Hanging out with friends, going dancing.
I guess money also makes you happy.
Something where you're not relying on money.
My cat.
My nephew.
My wife makes me really happy. And drinking.
A lying. So being comfortable.
Sleeping, really.
And movies as well.
Watching Liverpool beat Man United away.
Just be drunk.
I don't actually know what makes me happy.
More to life.
More to life.
I'd like to think there's more to life than this.
I often wonder if there is. I don't think there's more to life.
I'd like to think there is, though.
I don't know really.
Don't know everything that goes on in life, do you? So,
Yes, I do think there's more to life than this.
I don't know, really.
For a good part of my life, I was not a Christian. I think I really had 3 objections to Christianity. The first was, it just seemed so boring. It seemed really, really dull. I had sympathy with something that Robert Louis Stevenson once entered in his diary as if recording an extraordinary event. He wrote this: "I have been to church today and am not depressed." That was really my reaction. It just seemed a bit dull. Secondly, I thought it was untrue. I suppose I had intellectual objections. I remember when I was at school, I took part in a debate, and I spoke in favor of the motion, "This house believes that God does not exist," and I won the debate. And my third objection really was, it just seemed irrelevant. How could someone who lived 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, have any relevance to my life today? But at the same time, I actually think I was quite ignorant about Christianity. And I think that's true for many people. Before I lived in Malaysia, I lived in London. And one of my roles there was as an assistant chaplain to a hospital. And what we'd do is we'd go around the hospital wards, and occasionally we'd ask people if they wanted to take Holy Communion. And when you ask that question, you get some strange answers. I remember one man said to me, "No thanks, I'm Anglican." Another said, "No thank you, I asked for cornflakes." And a third one said, "No, better not, I've never been circumcised." So, I think I was a little bit ignorant too about faith. But I think I can say now, although I didn't feel it at the time, but looking back, I can sort of see that, there were some things missing in my life, because I was always looking forward to the next thing, and then the next thing, never really enjoying the present. I remember when I was at school, I thought, there must be something more. Maybe if I can become a school prefect, then life will really take off for me. And eventually I managed to become a very sort of lowly school prefect. And it was great for about 3 weeks. And then I thought, there must be more to life than this. And then I thought, well, maybe if I leave school, maybe once you've left school, that's when life gets really exciting. So I left school, and it was great for about 3 weeks. And then I thought, there must be more to life than this. And then at one time, I remember thinking, well, perhaps if I got a girlfriend, then my life would be complete. And somehow, don't ask me how, I got a girlfriend. And then after about 3 weeks... But I think lots of people go through life a bit like this, thinking there must be something more. They're on to the next thing, and then the next thing. The Hollywood actor Jim Carrey said this: "I wish everybody could get rich and famous and have everything they ever dreamt of, so they will know that is not the answer." But Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." He said, I'm that one person who can satisfy that spiritual hunger that is in every single person. That no matter how good all the other things are, our work or relationships or hobbies, we somehow always feel like there's something missing. A Japanese woman once said this. She said, in Japan, we need to eat rice. She said, it's like we have two stomachs, one for ordinary food and one for rice. And no matter how much ordinary food that we eat, until we've eaten rice, we just don't feel satisfied. And I think if Jesus had been chatting to her, he would have said, I am the rice of life. I am the one person who can satisfy this other stomach. The great journalist Bernard Levin, who said he was not a Christian, wrote this. Countries are full of people who have all the material comforts they desire, together with such non-material blessings as a happy family, and yet lead lives of quiet and at times noisy desperation, understanding nothing but the fact that there is a hole inside them. And however much food and drink they pour into it, however many motor cars and television sets they stuff it with, however many well-balanced children and loyal friends they parade around the edges of it, it still aches. Jesus said, I am the bread of life, the one person who can satisfy that hunger. Now, why is that? Why might that be true? Well, Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. First of all, Jesus brings direction to a lost world. He said, I am the way. Friends of mine, when their children were younger, had a maid. And the maid was learning English. And one time the children were arguing in their bedroom. So the maid ran into the bedroom, and what she meant to say to the children was, what on earth are you doing? But she actually ran in and said to them, what are you doing on earth? And the children sort of froze like this. It was quite a profound question. Actually, it's a good question. What are we doing on earth? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Who are we anyway? Is there any ultimate meaning or purpose to our lives? What happens when we die? These are the really big first-order questions of life. And if you've ever asked those questions, then I think you're not alone. I think many of us are searching to answer these questions. Leo Tolstoy wrote some of the most famous books ever written, like War and Peace or Anna Karenina. But he also wrote a book called A Confession, which is really about his life story, his search for meaning. And in that book, he describes how he rejects Christianity and goes on this pursuit of trying to answer the question of what's life all about. And at first he thought, well, maybe life is about pleasure. And he entered the social whirlwind, the party scene of Moscow and St. Petersburg. He lived a wild life, but then decided it didn't satisfy. So then he thought, well, maybe money is the answer. And he'd inherited a large estate, and he started to make quite a lot of money out of his books. But then he decided, no, that didn't satisfy. Then he thought, maybe success and fame is the answer. And, he wrote War and Peace, which is probably the top 3 books of all time ever written. And he became more and more successful through his writing. But again, it didn't satisfy him. Then he thought, okay, maybe family life is the answer. And in 1862, he got married. He had a very happy marriage. He and his wife had 13 children, which he said somewhat distracted him from his pursuit of meaning and purpose in life. And he had all of these things. And yet one question drove him to the verge of suicide. And it was this question. What meaning has my life that the inevitability of death does not destroy? and he looked for an answer in philosophy. But all he saw was this as an answer. In the infinity of space and the infinity of time, infinitely small particles mutate with infinite complexity. And unsurprisingly, he didn't find that very satisfying either. But eventually, he found in the peasant people of Russia the answer he'd been looking for. It was in their faith in God through Jesus Christ. Ultimately, there's only one relationship that is completely loving and totally ongoing, and that's a relationship with God. Now, sometimes people say to me, okay, well, what difference does that make in your life? Because, before I became a Christian, it's not like I was terribly unhappy or anything. So let me use an analogy, if I may. I'm old enough to remember as a child, we only had a black and white television. And thank you, you look so surprised. Thank you for feigning surprise. That's very kind of you. No, when I was growing up, we only had black and white TV. And I remember the day that my father came home with a color television and plugged it in. And I remember my amazement when I saw this clear picture in color for the first time. And once we experienced that, we never wanted to go back to black and white. And really that kind of describes the difference, really, that it's all made for me. Once you've seen color, you don't want to go back to the way it was before. This is what life is all about. Jesus said, I am the way. Secondly, he brings reality to a confused world. He said, I am the truth. Now, again, sometimes people say to me, well, Miles, it's great that he meets that spiritual hunger that you have, but isn't this just a crutch for weak people? I mean, it's lovely that it's good for you and it helps you, but I don't have that need. But unfortunately, logically, that kind of argument doesn't hold up, because if it's true for everyone, and if it's not true, then it's not lovely that some people might believe it because it helps them, because they're deluded. C.S. Lewis put it this way: Christianity is a statement which, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The one thing it cannot be is moderately important. So that's the question, isn't it? Is it true? Jesus said, I am the truth. The atheist writer Richard Dawkins wrote this: faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. Faith is the belief in spite of, even perhaps because of, the lack of evidence. But I don't think previously I'd realized quite how much evidence there is. One of the things we do on Alpha is we'll look at the historical evidence for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And the resurrection is really the linchpin of Christianity. And it's fascinating to me how many people who are kind of used to looking at evidence have come to the conclusion it's true. One professor of history at Oxford University described the resurrection as the best attested fact in history. And I hadn't realized how many pioneers of modern science were believers: Descartes, Newton, Kepler, Galileo, Locke, Copernicus, Faraday, Boyle, Mendel, Kelvin, Pasteur, Lister, Maxwell, Simpson. Professor James Simpson, who pioneered the discoveries that led to pain-free and safe surgery, was once asked, Professor Simpson, what was the best discovery you have ever made? And do you know what he said? He said, well, actually, the greatest discovery I ever made was the day I discovered Jesus Christ. But when Jesus said, I am the truth, he was talking more than just about a kind of intellectual truth. Because the Hebrew understanding of truth was truth as experienced. There's a big difference, isn't there, between intellectual knowledge and personal knowledge, between the head and the heart. If I may, let me use another analogy. I've been married to my wife for nearly 18 years. And let's say before I'd ever even met Sarah, I walked into a bookshop and I saw a book on the shelf and it was called Sarah, the Amazing Woman. So I thought, okay, let's have a look at this. And I open up that book and I see, okay, chapter 1, her sparkling personality. Chapter 2, her extraordinary intelligence. Chapter 3, her infinite patience. Chapter 4, her potential to be a long-suffering wife. Important. Chapter 5, her amazing cooking. Equally important. Chapter 6, her sporting ability. Quite a short chapter. But I'd better say not as short as it would be if it was a book on me. That's my caveat. But imagine I read all of that book cover to cover. I would have thought, wow, what an amazing woman. But I've never met her. It's simply head knowledge, intellectual knowledge. But now, tonight, I can say Sarah is an amazing woman. That's 18 years of experience of marriage. That's not just head knowledge, that's personal knowledge. And, do you know, if somebody says, I know Jesus is the truth, yes, they're saying, I believe here that is the case, but they're also speaking from personal experience of having a relationship with the risen Jesus. He said, I am the truth. And thirdly, he brings life in a dark world. He said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. You know, Jesus came to set us free from the things that spoil our lives. I think there's a difference between mistakes that we make and things that we do that are wrong. You know, we all make lots of mistakes. I don't know whether you've ever read, you know, how schools, after exam results are published, they sometimes publish some of the papers that were taken anonymously. And you can see the mistakes that pupils have made. Some of them are quite amusing. I read this from a history paper, the exam that was taken. One student wrote, the Greeks were a highly sculptured people, and without them we wouldn't have history. The Greeks also had myths. A myth is a female moth. Another student wrote, Socrates was a famous Greek teacher who went around giving people advice. They killed him. Socrates died from an overdose of wedlock. After his death, his career suffered a dramatic decline. Another wrote, Johann Bach wrote a great many musical compositions and had a large number of children. In between, he practiced on an old spinster, which he kept up in his attic. Bach died from 1750 to the present. And then this is my favorite. Bach was the most famous composer in the world, and so was Handel. Handel was half German, half Italian, and half English. He was very large. So the mistakes that we make, I think, can be relatively harmless in life. But the things that we do wrong, I think, really matter. I know that in my life, I've done things which were genuinely wrong. And I know I've experienced genuine guilt. And the message, the Christian message, is good news. Actually, that's what the word gospel actually means. Good news. And the good news is this: God loves you. That's at the heart of it all. He loves you and me so much that he came in the person of his son, Jesus, to live and die for us. You know, on the cross, Jesus took everything that you and I have ever done wrong, said wrong, or thought that's wrong. and he died in our place so that we can be forgiven. In fact, even if you'd been the only person alive, he still would have come and done that. That's how much he loves you and me. And that means it's possible for our guilt to be taken away. He came to set us free from guilt, to set us free from addiction if we're struggling with an addiction. He came to set us free from fear, maybe a related fear or the fear of death even. Because not only did Jesus die for us, he rose again from the dead. He conquered death so that one day we might do the same. And he set us free to know God, to have a relationship with him. He set us free to change, to be the kind of person that deep down we may long to be. And he set us free to love with a new dimension. Because, when we've experienced God's love for us poured into our hearts by the Holy Spirit, not only do we begin to change in being that person we want to be, we have more love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. But when we've experienced his love, it gives us a new love to love the world around us, a world out there that's hurting so much. Because all of this, it's not just about us having our own nice, warm, fuzzy feeling inside. It's so that we can go out there and transform a world that's a mess and that's hurting. Now, it's not easy. Faith is not easy. I don't think it's easy to be a Christian. The rock musician Alice Cooper, who came to faith slightly later on in life, he was interviewed and he said this about becoming a Christian. He said, "It's the most rebellious thing I've ever done. Drinking beer is easy. Trashing your hotel room is easy. But being a Christian, that's a tough call. That's real rebellion." It's not easy, but nor is it boring. It's not untrue. It's not irrelevant to our lives. It's exciting. It's true. It's relevant. Jesus said, "I am the truth. I am the way, and I am the life." Now, if you live to be about 80 years of age, if you live to 80, sociologists reckons that we'll spend 20 years and 3 months asleep. We'll spend 10 years and 5 months watching TV. 7 years and 6 months eating, but as Malaysians, we can probably double that. 5 years and 9 months in some form of transportation, 18 months waiting in a queue, and 6 months of our life waiting at red traffic lights. Now, I think it's shocking that some people in life will spend more time waiting at red traffic lights than they will grappling with these big questions and issues of life and faith. So if you're even slightly intrigued about anything that you've heard tonight, then we would love to invite you just to spend a couple of hours each week for the next few weeks here on Alpha, exploring some of these exciting issues and questions of life. So thank you so much for listening. It's now time for discussion in your small group, and there's coffee and refreshments whilst you discuss. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you for listening.